And that's how we all beat the casino, and they can't stop us. It's even legal. Oh, hi. Welcome to Wizard World Virtual Experiences and Comic-Con Fusion virtual experiences, as we tend to do. I am Dr. Travis Langley, distinguished professor of psychology, best known as the author of lots of stuff, including the book Batman Psychology, A Dark and Stormy Night, and editor of books such as Captain America versus Iron Man, Freedom, Security, Psychology, which several of our panelists today contributed to. Panelists, who are each of you? I'm going to go on the order you appear in my screen. Other Travis, who are you? What are you known for? Why are you here?
Hi, my name is Travis Adams. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and a social worker who specializes with PTSD for combat veterans. I've contributed a few books with Dr. Langley, and I'm happy to be here.
Sam.
Hi, my name is Sam Carrico. I host a movie news and review talk show called The Film Fan Club on YouTube.
Eric.
I'm Eric Wesselmann. I'm an associate professor of psychology at Illinois State University. My specialty is social psychology, particularly social inclusion and exclusion. I've contributed several chapters to Travis Langley's book series. I also have a film blog called Film Culture, and I'm happy to be here too.
Justine.
Hi, I'm Justine Mastin. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, as well as a yoga teacher, a writer, and podcaster. I've contributed to some of the books mentioned previously, and I have my own book out now, Starship Therapies, Using Therapeutic Fan Fiction to Rewrite Your Life. Pick it up.
Yeah. Janina, you've got some books and stuff too.
Yeah, just a few. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Janina Scarlet. I'm a clinical psychologist, author, and a full-time geek. And I specialize in incorporating pop culture into evidence-based therapy to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm most known for books like Superhero Therapy, Supernatural Therapy, Harry Potter Therapy, a whole bunch of books contributed alongside with Travis and many others. And I'm really excited to be here.
And we have now seen the complete series of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The first time I've seen a series change the name of the series during the end credits. I thought that was a really, really nice touch. Your general impressions of the series as a whole, now that we've seen all of it?
Yeah, I loved it. Learning a little bit about like how they had to reshoot some things and redo some script work because of what was going on. I think some of it was a little confusing at times, but overall, I really loved the series. I love the direction they went.
I love the character development. I definitely love the series development. As a refugee and an immigrant myself, I was really caught by the series message, and I definitely wanted to see how the story would play out. I could definitely see where the writers were going with both sides. And so I thought it was just really, really well developed. I thought the characters were really interesting, and I would love to talk to them all. So at some point, I would love to have all of them come into my therapy session. Just saying.
I was really impressed. I was pleasantly surprised, too, because I was skeptical going into it, knowing that they were taking on the character of U.S. agent, the flag smashers, these different kind of themes. And I was really happy with how the series turned out, and also getting to see those smaller character moments with Bucky and Sam Wilson's characters that you can only do in a smaller television show that gets you, or a miniseries that gets you like 6 or 8 episodes or something like that. I think it was really well done. And I liked WandaVision a lot too. So I didn't know how much I was going to like this. It really pleasantly surprised me.
I'm with you, Sam. Like I loved the overarching themes as well. Obviously, there's some amazing cultural stuff in there. And those just person-to-person moments between Bucky and Sam, and the episode that The Truth, I think it was the 5th episode, where suddenly we're in like a fanfic AU where Sam and Bucky work on a boat, and I was just in heaven. I loved it.
I really enjoyed it too, and I wish it would have been longer. So I'm hoping that a lot of the introduced that they will pick up and weave into other series they're going to do. I really, really liked that they dealt with what for me is the narrative elephant in the room, and that's blip and post-blip and what that does to society, and particularly what happens to the everyday individuals, right? I mean, obviously we're seeing what's happening to the heroes, but there's a whole lot of people in that universe, so it's nice to see them hit that head on.
And I'm with Justine. I particularly loved episode 5. The first three, good, strong, really enjoyed them. 4 to 6 is when it really got me fired up. And I just enjoyed episode 5 with it pulling together, fixing the daggum boat, or training with the shield, and all kinds of moments where it really felt natural, this progression. And I want so much more of Isaiah Bradley.
Yeah.
Yes, I want him to be one of the Avengers.
I think they've done a wonderful job with characterization. Did they surprise you with this show? What surprised you?
Are we allowed to do spoilers?
Yes, the show's over. If people haven't seen it, they shouldn't be watching this this post-show breakdown. So yes, Eric, what spoilers?
They surprised me with what happened with Sharon Carter, age 13. I wasn't, and I know that in the comics, at least, during the sort of post-Civil War death of Captain America, she was having her mind influenced. So I don't know if they're working that completely different direction.
A couple of different points in the comic book history, Dr. Faustus has manipulated her mind. And in fact, there was one point where she was dead in the comics for a long time when she'd been brainwashed by him, one of the minions of this 50s guy who'd been a Captain America and turned into this a neo-Nazi guy. So she died for a long time while under his influence, which was just shown to Cap in a video. So there was plenty of room for her to be alive. It was kind of surprising she stayed dead for so long. But from WandaVision, I don't think Marvel wants to play too strongly with the idea of a man's manipulations being behind these interesting turns with their women. So I don't think it'll be something like Faustus having manipulated her. She may be up to something else, but I'm not completely sure who a bunch of the good guys and bad guys are. Justine and Sam, you both had some things to say.
Oh, I was saying how surprised I was with the series, and then also in how it talked about through Falcon's character. And obviously it's, a superhero allegory, but the way they talk about being a black man in America and the representation for a black man becoming Captain America. I knew they were going to have overtones of that type of themes, given it's a Disney show. I didn't know they were going to be that abrupt where he outright says, I know what this represents, I know what this means, and he still, chooses to fight for the country. And even he just recognizes the complicated situation he finds himself in. I thought the discussion that it had, again, was not. I knew it was going to be political. I knew that it was going to have political, aspects to the blip and the flag smashers. But just being able to weave all this stuff in a way that was like really natural to the characters, I was really, like I said, pleasantly surprised is the phrase that comes to mind.
I have to agree with Sam. Just the way that they depicted both overt and covert racism was so powerful, I think, in the way that a lot of people might not realize. And for me, episode 6 was my favorite. And the part where the new Captain America is giving a speech and he's saying, well, when you're making these decisions, how many representatives do you actually have in the room? That was, to me, I took it as like the message of the entire series, because there's so many individuals that have so much power, make decisions for people they've never met, for people they've never spoken to, for people they don't have in the room, not realizing how their decisions affect other people. And so in that regard, to me, that was the whole show. And it was unbelievably and just incredibly well represented.
With the Isaiah Bradley storylines integrated, I really love that. Getting a little bit of the history of how they treated African American soldiers early on in the military, and then for Sam to set up at the end of the last episode with having Isaiah Bradley's section in the Captain America area. I mean, I love that. I was not expecting anything like that. I just thought it was such a great thing that was done, and the well shot in a way that didn't like oversell it, but it was just beautifully done.
I agree with everything. So not to rehash anyone else's thoughts, I just want to talk about the love of my life, James Buchanan Barnes, and how we got to see how being the Winter Soldier impacted him. And I'm just so glad that they're actually talking about this, and I'm sure Travis could speak more to this, being a veteran. So often in media, when somebody has their, mind taken over in some way, they just forget. Like, oh, that time never happened, right? So they have to cope with lost time. But here's Bucky, who needs to cope with lost time and what he's done. And I just wanted actual Bucky amends. I wish we'd gotten more Bucky amends.
I was going to say, I really would have liked to have seen more of Bucky's storyline wrap, because I feel like there's a lot of great setup there in those first few episodes. And that's what I was talking about with how you deal with the day-to-day reaction to being one of these larger than life characters. But I feel like there's a lot, it's really front loaded with a lot of great setup for Bucky's character. And then, and I like that Falcon got a lot of screen time in the last episode as well, last couple episodes as well. I mean, I really think you shouldn't sacrifice any of that. I just want more. I wish they would have done a lot more, other than I feel like a quick montage to be like, oh yeah, Bucky's fine too.
Right, just one more ep. Just one more ep so we can see Bucky do his actual amends that aren't Avenges.
Yeah, I feel like that may be some of what we lost because of COVID. Like, they barely glimpse at the therapist is so visible in those first 2 episodes. She's so in our face. We're counting on seeing her again, and we barely glimpse her in this last episode, and I can't help but think that's probably because of COVID changing some things.
I didn't realize that COVID changed that much, actually, about the series. I haven't done a lot of reading about the behind the scenes, so if they're actually able to hide as much, as if it really impacted that much and they're able to hide a lot, that's really good, because I think the show, other than that, was pretty well presented if it was impacted by COVID.
One of the main things, Sam, going to what you asked, that you see and then you don't see again is like when they're talking about vaccines on the back of that truck in like the second episode. And then it's never mentioned again. And then Mama Donya, you're supposed to have a lot more of her, but they cut her out because it all had to do with a global pandemic, too close to home with what's going on. So they changed the storyline.
Wow. They covered it up really well.
I read an article by a writer who was essentially praising the lack of seeing more backstory to John Walker and Lamar, because one, well, it's not their story. They're players in somebody else's story, so it has to do with what's their place in the story for Falcon and Winter Soldier. And he comes on, he is the type that he is. He's a very present, focused kind of guy to begin with. And they thought this actually played 2 strengths of the character, while definitely teasing that all kinds of other things have happened. That I definitely think we're going to see more when he's there with the Contessa. Right. And we don't even know. There's so many characters. We don't know for sure if they're good guys or bad guys. Like, Contessa was a good guy for most of her history in Marvel Comics. And then she turned into the second Madam Hydra. And we don't know which one we're dealing with here. Is she recruiting him like for, kind of a Secret Warriors sort of thing? Like, Nick Fury just going for some deadlier superhero types? We don't know. I like it. I like not knowing, when we also know they're going to be delivering more stuff to us, just about every week.
I get the impression that she's a villain, right? Because she killed the Flag Smashers at the very end and blew them up, and is like operating outside of the law and all that sort of thing. And then I get the impression that she's going to be a villain. Val.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who think Zemo killed them.
Well, yeah, because it was his butler.
Yeah,
it was his butler.
Didn't she did that coy thing though, where she's like, "I didn't blow him up." Well, maybe I did.
Well, they could be working together, right?
I thought it was so obvious.
And it could be like the Thunderbolts, and she's part of like with Thunderbolt Ross and things like that. Because that's really what I thought what we were going to see with the Power Broker was going to be Thunderbolt Ross. So that Agent Carter was a surprise for me.
Was there anything that disappointed you?
So I do think that this could have been a little bit longer and a little bit more impactful to the ultimate MCU. I don't know.
I wanted to know a little bit more about the Flag Smashers. Like, I wanted to know how the coming back from the blip affected them. I wanted to see it. The heartbreak of walking into your house and either somebody else is living there or your spouse is now remarried to somebody else. And, just kind of what they went through and a little bit more about what they wanted. So I just wanted to see what they had been through, and then where are they going? What's going to happen to those millions of people?
And these are real concerns. In real life, one of the comparisons we used before was people who had been incorrectly reported dead at war, and then after years away return home, and their lives have gone on, they're things may have been sold or given away or thrown away. Spouses remarried. My wife had a supervisor who, the supervisor's mom in younger days had to make a choice between the husband she'd married and had been reported dead and her current husband. She had to figure that out. These are some things people have to really do. And it may not be as extreme as that, but we have other things that separate people, divide people in their lives, and where your life is in upheaval. You've been in a coma and you come home and things have changed. I don't want to just go to these extremes of prison, but we get it. Everybody watching those gets it, and you can't help but think about it. There's so much that we can't help but imagine about that blip.
Part of what Sam there in his sort of speech to the world, I love that moment, and I think this kind of dovetails off what Janina was talking about, where he says, nobody's asking, why Carly and these others were willing to fight and die for this cause, right? And I mean, so it obviously has very much parallels with modern day extremist groups, right? And a lot of really cool work being done on the psychology of radicalization right now. And I think some of it has to do with feeling excluded or marginalized, right? So a lot of interesting work that Ari Kirklansky and some others have done, where they've actually gone in and interviewed members of extremist cells who are incarcerated, and find that a big driver is this feeling of being excluded, not just interpersonally, but just systemically at the societal level, right? And I think Carly even makes some comments to that effect, like when she's criticizing Captain America's shield, she's like, that symbolizes everybody who's been left out, right? So.
And I was also thinking about history in general, and genocide and displacement, and how many people went through that, and to this day are still experiencing prejudice for something that happened to them. I thought it was just such a deep message in the entire show, and probably really multi-layered.
Yeah, I like how they did the when Sam is talking to them, it's like, well, what do you think the people on the other end is saying about you guys, right? Who's the terrorist? You think you have weapons approaching them. And I really love the fact that he kind of flipped the perspective on them to show them, like, hey, you got to look at both sides here.
And when Sam makes his speech, that's when you can almost picture Rocket Raccoon. He's pretty good at that, huh? That's what it's. Oh, this guy can be Captain America. John Walker can't make a speech like that. John Walker might do the kind of talk you give your football team.
No, Rocket was loving this whole thing. I would love just a little cutscenes of what Rocket was experiencing. It's like, oh, I can meet the Wakandans, learn how to get somebody's arm, and.
Well, yeah. I really like Sam's speech at the end too, because it speaks to two different versions of patriotism versus like blindly loving your country and pretending there's nothing wrong with it, or recognizing what's wrong with it and realizing that we can do better and striving to do better. And I like that he kind of takes he takes the best of what Carly, aims to do, and the best of what John Walker would probably think that he aims to do in terms of fixing the world and also, or fixing America and honoring America.
We keep bringing up John Walker. So let's actually talk about this guy. I think this is someone who's genuinely trying to do the right thing. And he does have that wonderful partial redemption moment. Most superheroes would decide a little faster on whether to go help people or go after the bad guy, but he did make the help people decision.
Yeah, I loved his talk to the Senate, and he was saying, "You built me." Like, ooh, he's doing what he was taught was right. And that's such a commentary on what is good, what is evil, what are we taught, social constructs. And I wasn't a huge John Walker fan. I don't know that anybody saw him come on the scene and they were like, that guy's awesome. But I appreciated that speech, because I thought to myself, okay, so I get how he got this way. Who knows if we had met John Walker when he was in high school, if he would have, gone right to save the kids, or I guess they were grown-ups, but save the hostages, right? But he was taught not to.
So it would be nurture in his case, like where you think he could be. This is probably a huge product of his, like the his training is kind of going back to the thing about Bucky avenging versus making amends, and he's kind of been taught that, okay, yeah, kill, do that, do this. This is whenever you're trying to save the world, you're trying to do the thing, you kill the bad guy, and it ends with him with an outburst like that. So you think it's nature versus nurture in that case?
Well, somebody with those rigid kind of views, very much aggressive views, very much is likely to have been raised by an authoritarian parent or parents. With him and the masculine issues, you'd have definitely had an authoritarian dad. That seems highly likely, or at least authoritarian male figure who was very present in his life to act the way he does. I see nods.
Do you think that leads into why he's so easy to go with someone like Val at the end? Like, she's like, all right, well, you've been disgraced. I can help you not be disgraced. And he's like, all right, whatever, sure.
Yeah, that is actually an aspect of authoritarianism. Of course, some people are the authoritarian leaders, but they also rely on authoritarian followers, people who it's very much trained, wired into them to find a leader to follow, the leader who can be responsible for the things they're doing. And he does seem like a guy who wants a leader. Steve Rogers never seemed like a guy who getting someone to lead him was a priority.
Right, he was the leader, whereas John Walker, that's a great point to how he's just not fit to be Captain America, because Steve Rogers was the leader. John Walker goes to find a leader.
He also may be trying to make up for, I don't know, like there's some guilt or some I'm not good enough. I mean, you get some of that at the very beginning when he's first talking to his spouse, and is very nervous, and you keep saying, I keep just trying to be the best I can be. And then, of course, we get this very brief exchange between him and Lamar in like an airport or something, making reference to some type of mission where they lost comrades, right? And that was the whole, like, what would you do if you could take the serum, right? And then, of course, then Lamar also dies. So I think he's probably got a lot of that going on in the background, too.
Yeah. In the comics, Lamar also got the serum. Those two characters specifically got it from the Power Broker, who was a different character in the comics. So speaking of that Power Broker, among the questions that have been suggested for us, Lawrence Brenner, who's contributed thoughts to our dialogues a number of times, he wanted to just know more about understanding the trauma of Sharon Carter and U.S. Agent. What does it take? We don't completely know what she's up to. She kills some people here and there, but so do a whole lot of the good guys too. So how does she wind up where she is? She doesn't seem to have been blipped. I can't see how she would have built up that much stuff in that amount of time. Seems like she must have been around for those 5 years.
She was ended up in Madripoor. She was on the run, right? After getting Captain
Civil
America's
War
shield. So she's in hiding. And she, isn't one of the greatest hives of scum and villainy outside of Tatooine, right? And she manages to rise to the top, right? I mean, that's saying a lot.
Was that kind of turn, that villain heel turn, kind of out of left field for you guys? I don't know. I thought after Captain America Civil War, she was helping Captain America, right? And this one is like, oh, I guess she's the bad guy now. Is it just pure opportunism, or is that in her nature, or what was going on there? I was just like, at the end, for the last couple episodes, I was like, oh, okay. That was probably the least part of the show I was the least invested in, honestly.
See, to me, it was kind of like, because she was always making those phone calls, like she was checking in with somebody above her. And then for the end, where she's kind of like talking about the other way, like, hey, now we get to do all this. Almost like a partnership, but, she needed somebody to help look out for her, especially at the beginning, right? And if there is somebody big, bad behind her, it's going to help set her up for success to get that much in 5 years, half the world or not.
Character was fascinating because it's so multi-layered, right? She's neither completely good nor completely bad. She has her own agenda, and I think she had to do what she had to do to survive for those 5 years. And I imagine she probably felt really betrayed. I mean, I'd be furious if I was in her shoes, and it doesn't seem like she had many other choices for survivorship. And so now that she's like 5 years scarred by what happened to her, I imagine it's really hard to figure out what the right thing to do is.
Because when she puts that bomb on that guy, or the gas on that guy, doesn't even bat an eye. She just keeps walking.
She was skilled. She was a skilled fighter, and so in Madripoor, she probably made her way up the ranks really quickly because for all we know, these are, your garden variety bad guys, and here's Sharon Carter who has all this training and skill and stealth, and so yeah, she was just trying to survive, and then my guess is at some point she was like, I'm kind of kicking ass, so I guess I'll keep rising up the ranks, and why should I listen to other people when I can be in charge?
She'd already worked for Hydra for years without knowing it, and then had a massive disillusionment over that.
Yeah, so your whole idea of that's a good point. Your whole idea of what is right and wrong is probably permanently scarred by it, an experience like that.
So where do you think these characters are going in their lives?
Which ones? There's so many.
Yeah, there are so many to wonder. Who's in your head? Who do you wonder about the most?
Me? Oh gosh. Well, I definitely want to see what Captain America is gonna do now, and just gosh, that was incredible. And I want to see what Isaiah is gonna do now. So those two are ones I'm most interested in.
I want to see his grandson and what they do if they do a Young Avengers and how they do that. And what happens with Bucky? Because now that he's kind of there and the way he finished this episode, we don't really know what his life might look like because he's no longer living, by his book. He has freedom from that. So now he has autonomy.
Yeah, he's never been in a better position to make his life what he wants it to be. Because before he was a younger guy in the military and the World War II, and then he died, and then he was the Winter Soldier. So and then now he's been in the Avengers and recovering from that. So just huge bouts of trauma throughout all this, and then now he's finally recovered enough, and he's got enough stuff behind him that he can completely make the world and his life his own at this point. So yeah, I'd love to see where Bucky goes, and then also I want to see U.S. Agent and Val, and I want to see what happens there with that villain plot. Also, I got to say, while we're talking about characters, I really love Zemo in this. This had one of my favorite tropes: is the former villain has to team up with the good guys now, and they have to work together for a little while, but he's still a villain, so you got to keep an eye on him. It's so great. Daniel Brühl did a great job playing Zemo, so I obviously wouldn't mind seeing more of him as well.
He was smart. He was a smart and sometimes funny Zemo. Justine?
I was just commenting on Zemo's amazing coats. But I just, in my own headcanon, of course, I want to know how my Bucky's doing. I think he needs some more therapy. I think he could probably benefit from an intensive outpatient, where, he goes for a few hours every day and works on his emotional regulation. I think maybe some DBT, some dialectical behavior therapy would be good for Bucky. And then, go do some journaling about your values, and then go start your life. I'd love to see what you're up to.
Yeah, but he gave away the book that would have been the perfect thing for his journaling.
Yeah.
But that was
I am 100% sure he could find a new journal.
Well, yeah, because that was Steve's journal originally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big part of the character growth from the beginning between Sam and Bucky to the end. I mean, even to the point where in the episode that you're all referencing with the training, where we're just two guys who have a friend and he's no longer here, right? I mean, they're trying to reformat their self-concepts to be without someone who was so important to them.
One thing I really love too, now that what you're talking, Eric, I thought about was when Bucky's talking to Sam, he's like, hey, when Steve told me what he was going to do. So we got to know that there was some behind the scenes stuff, and that he agreed, because at the beginning, it kind of feels like he almost is mad that he wasn't selected. And that's how a lot of people thought it might've played out. But for him to know going in and then for him to make that decision, I think hurt, but he agreed with it with Steve, which I loved.
Yeah, I think Bucky definitely thinks he's not worthy to be Captain America. I don't think it crosses his mind for a second that he's worthy of it. When we did the first one of these on Falcon and Winter Soldier for Wizard, it came up. I think Yoni was the one who said maybe we'll find out. It was about if Bucky knew or not. And that's the one where I specifically said I don't think we need to know, but we did find out. It's because I know one of my sons and I, we talked many times about it. It really seems like Bucky and Steve must have had a conversation about this the night before, because when he looks over and sees the back of 90-something-year-old Steve, he knows who that is over there and what it's about. He already knows. And so he was ready for it. One thing I thought was interesting, that conversation when he is doing his one example of making some amends toward the end of the last episode, when he says, I didn't have a choice. With some people, that would sound like they're making an excuse. With him, it honestly sounded like he felt even more guilty about the fact that he was not able to assert himself through that. It honestly did not sound like an excuse to me. It sounded like part of his guilt.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think he feels haunted by it. Obviously he feels haunted by it, but you could just feel just through Sebastian Stan's acting chops also in this, it was throughout the whole series was just top notch. It was so great to see him given something meatier to do with the character. That scene was great. Also, there's the scene where he's having doubts again. Yeah, you could tell he probably doesn't want to be Captain America, but he has very strong feelings about who carries that shield. And in that scene where he's like, if Steve was wrong about you, then maybe he was wrong about me. There's so many great moments for Sebastian Stan throughout this show.
When Eric pointed out that was Steve's journal that he gave away, I think that is an interesting touch that really says he means it when he thanks her in just a few words. Giving her the journal that had been Steve was something that really said how deeply it all meant to him, regardless of how quiet he was through so much of the conversations.
Yeah, I loved how Bucky talked about the shield and the journal being his family, what was left of his family. Because, I mean, how many of us have heirlooms or totems or whatever you want to call it that connect us to our history? And there it is. And yeah, for him to gift his therapist this journal, which is basically, this is what I have left of Steve. I'm giving this to you. I have never received such a profound gift from a client. And I don't want to. Please don't give me your family heirlooms. But it was a nice nod for us, since we don't get more of the therapist. We get a moment of really clearly Bucky saying, you mattered, our relationship mattered, thank you, I'm okay.
It's a really great way of the show and the writing in the show being like show and don't tell. They could have had a really long, complicated scene where he talks to the therapist, and maybe that was the original plan, and maybe kind of this is the case of constraints kind of working in your favor. But also with the family thing where he's like, that's the closest thing I have to a family now, and then showing that in the last episode that now he has actually a family with the Falcon and his friend, or Captain America and his friends. And they could have had like a really cheesy line like, "You're my family now," and instead it was really well, it was organic and it was really well done. Again, yeah, but, okay. The more I think about it, maybe they did do a pretty good job with Bucky's arc.
So one of the topics suggested about finding community support when you don't have it. I had to think for a moment. Maybe they're referring to in episode 5 when they pull together, or maybe talking about the bigger issues such as the refugees being able to get support from wider communities. It's an important general topic. There's no specific question to it, but do y'all have any thoughts on this?
I think a lot of times we feel alone in our struggles. Our depression feeds depression, and we feel isolated. So for Sam to really think about when his sister's talking about making sure that the 2 school kids get food because their dad doesn't get up, right? Like, you're still taking care of people just like mom did. You know what? Did anybody ever pay us back for mom? Because we need some help now too. And being vulnerable enough to say like, hey, we're messed up and need some help. And then the whole community coming together, I thought that was really great. And it reminds us, because I have a lot of veterans that feel alone, that we are part of something more than we give ourselves credit for.
And belonging is such a core part of who we are, regardless of our backgrounds, etc. Right? It's just a core psychological need, and we're sensitive to any sort of information that sort of fills up our tank, right? That suggests we're valued by others, and anything that may make us feel like we're not, right? So that's just sort of a general truth. And then, yeah, when you're dealing with psychological struggles, feeling alone, feeling lonely has its own negative impacts on your psychological and physical well-being. So it probably just, interacts and intensifies.
Really glad you brought up belongingness, right? Because that's a universal need. We're wired for belonging and connection. And, it just again brought up the idea of how devastating the experience of the people affected by the blip might have been, because now they don't belong anywhere. And like the borders have shifted, they don't have a place to go, they don't have something that's familiar. And just speaking from personal experience, just immigrating to another country is such a difficult experience all on its own. But then if you're made to feel like the other, and if you're prejudiced, and you're being othered by other people too, while already feeling that way, it can further intensify that person's traumatic experience.
Most of us have not been refugees from another country, but 1 out of 6 of us in this session have. I think most people at some point in their lives have had an experience of being somewhere where they knew nobody, where life had gone through some kind of upheaval. Why did we enjoy this? It's a well-told story, but there's more to it with these characters. There's something symbolic about Captain America. She'll wheeze into it. About Captain America, the name of the character, the shield. The shield has been passed on. The name has been passed on. What is it that's meaningful about Captain America himself? Or there are a few out there. There have been a few herselves in history, especially some recent ones.
I think it's a really great way of taking a simple kind of idea, which is, a really patriotic superhero, and complicating it. And it's like, okay, what does that patriotism mean? What would that patriotism look like in a political context? And also with, it's kind of hard to completely ignore that this is a very important time for representation for people of color. And then what would it be what would it mean for a person of color to take on that role as Captain America? So I think this is a really great way of modernizing that very simple idea and making it more complex and showing it what it would be like in today. And also, there's a lot of great stuff with the Flag Smashers, which again, there was so much nuance brought to those characters. How would you in this world, how would you create people to be in a desperate enough situation where they would be part of a radical anarchist group, and how would they be thinking what they're doing is right? So I think this is a pretty simple topic that hit all the right things at really the right time, which is really great foresight for Disney Plus, because I think originally this was supposed to come out before WandaVision, if I remember correctly, but I think with it coming out now, it feels really modern, but also very classic, and I think it worked really well adapting it.
I think you also have like really good bonding with these characters already. When Sam looks at the shield when it's in the glass and it's on his left side, or he's on the left of it, and like just the little things like that, you already know who Sam is, who Bucky is, and then to find out more, I think we're already kind of intrigued about it. And like Sam said, with having like those values of Captain America being passed down, John Walker couldn't be Captain America because he wasn't in the room when Steve Rogers said no to the Sokovia Accords and being monitored. He wanted to be better, and Sam saw that. So, like, to me, the mantle of Captain America is doing what's right when needed, not because of who says what. It's, they're open to perception and looking at the whole picture to say, no, we need to stop this.
No, I love how I imagine every single viewer loved the show for many different reasons, right? Because I think everyone was able to find something that spoke to them on many different levels. And for me, the show spoke to me about the importance of representation and legacy and leadership, and how the people that are in that kind of leadership position have a huge responsibility, because who they are on screen and off screen can lead to either great actions or terrible actions, right? And so the representation of someone like Captain America has to be the right one. And how much responsibility that comes with all the people looking up to that person.
I think it says a lot too that Sam Wilson didn't originally want the mantle. He didn't see it as being something that he could do, and then through the course of the series, he realizes that even though he doesn't want to be the person that does that, he is the right person that does it. And I think that says a lot about leadership too.
Right. What's the first step of the hero's journey? Refusal of the call.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we do it all the way around to return to the ordinary world with your gift. And now we get to see him start the hero's journey all over again with the next Cat movie. Just from a Joseph Campbellian Jungian perspective. Friends at home, if you're not familiar with those, Google them. I think you'll dig both those ideas. This was just really satisfying. There were archetypes. There was a beautiful, you know, circle of the hero's journey. And even for folks who aren't familiar with that terminology, we love the hero's journey.
So we're coming up on the hour. We'll continue our conversation, which we'll also put on the Comic Confusion channel, and Dr. Asher Johnson will join us for that conversation too. All of you who've been with us, where can people find you online?
All right, you can find me at Twitter at @themarine_peer, PEER.
Sam Carrico. You can find me on the various social media sites at Samuel D. Carrico, and I host a YouTube show called the Film Fan Club Show. Dr. Scarlet has previously joined me to talk about WandaVision. It was a great episode, and this week we're doing an Oscars special. So youtube.com/the Film Fan Club.
So you can find me at the Department of Psychology's homepage at Illinois State University. You can find me on the Twitter at Eric Wesselmann. And then you can find my film blog at Film Culture.
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Mind Body Fandom, because I take a holistic approach to healing, mind, body, and fandom. And you can pick up Starship Therapies, using therapeutic fan fiction to rewrite your life, wherever books are sold.
I am Dr. Janina Scarlet. You can find me on Twitter at Shadow Quill or Dr. Janina Scarlet Official on Instagram. And I have a few podcasts if you're interested: Superhero Therapy, Harry Potter Therapy, Supernatural Therapy.
And I'm Travis Langley. I'm easy to find. Bye. And that was just